inquiry project arises from an interest in variation in students' writing and how it is students come to learn techniques of variation. My three inquiry questions are: what role, if any, does learning variation in writing, that is to say diction, syntax, and style, play in students' writing skills? Second, how does variation in writing affect value judgments? Finally, what are some ways students learn variation in writing? To begin with, for primary research, I had the opportunity to interview 3 teachers of writing and ask them what they observe regarding variation in their students' writing and what aspects of their pedagogy might influence variation. The first person I interviewed was Tiffany Nicholson, a freshman and sophomore English teacher at J.L. Mann High School in Greenville, South Carolina. As with the other interviewees, she confirms that writing which uses variation in diction, syntax, and style tends to get better judgments of value. That is to say, writing which uses variation effectively is more likely to be considered good writing than that which does not. Concerning her pedagogy, she stressed the importance of both reading for exposure to a variety of words, syntax, and style, and writing exercises for practice. Another point she emphasized was the use of scaffolding in all of her assignments in the classroom. Her writing assignments are meant to build upon another skill, allowing students to become more comfortable with complexity in their writing as they go along. She also implements workshops in which she will attempt to pair beginner, intermediate, and advanced students so that they might learn from one another in the workshop. Finally, she emphasized the need for students to practice different types of writing, that is to say, narrative writing, technical writing, fiction writing, etc., so that they might incorporate elements of each into their style, thus allowing them to vary their style. The next person I had the privilege of interviewing was Dr. Becky Thompson, a professor of English at North Greenville University. Dr. Thompson also confirmed that implementing elements of variation into writing makes the writing more prone to be deemed good. For her, personally, grading essays is much more enjoyable if each sentence is not 7 words long and there's some variation in the syntactical patterns in the diction. On the topic of reading, she asserted that many students in her freshman comp class do not have much of an interest in reading, and therefore they do not get regular exposure to writing techniques to imitate. Furthermore, she also described that many of her freshman comp students are too intimidated to try complexity in their writing. She said that if students were more audacious in trying new vocabulary or sentence structures, then this might open the way for them to learn from their mistakes. Finally, as an example of an assignment, Dr. Thompson described to me that she will often have students write on a particular topic and then go back and label each sentence, either compound complex, or so forth, hoping that this will give them more tools to use advanced syntactical structures. My final interview was with Dr. Cheryl Collier, Dean of English at North Greenville University, who teaches fiction writing and technical writing amongst other writing classes. Like the others, she too affirms variation's positive effects on value judgments concerning writing. When asked about her pedagogy, she gave me a list of essentials including reading, practice and exercise, feedback to students, revision, editing, and the need for workshops. In her ideas on assessment, she stressed the need for process assessment or formative assessment. For instance, in fiction writing, she often gives assessments to students on a chapter they are required to bring in each week as part of the final novella due at the end of the semester. That is to say, she gives them formative assessment instead of just assessing the final novella. Also, she has students give each other feedback in workshops in which students will learn from one another. As students get used to the feedback, she said, they often become bolder in what they attempt in their writing. Finally, Dr. Collier told me that she will often begin the first 3 weeks of class without grading the writing. During this time, she often sees less proficient writers learn more from proficient writers and make a huge leap in a short amount of time. Okay, next I'd like to talk about 3 trends I saw from the interviews from the teachers of writing. First is the affirmation that variation does improve value judgments. Next, in order to improve variation skills, I noticed that each one affirmed that students need both reading and exercise, the first for exposure and the latter for practice. Finally, each person I spoke with uses workshops in some form or fashion in order to improve students' writing by having students learn from one another. Next, I want to talk about 2 different articles I have found very interesting while doing research on variation in students' writing. The first is Researching Simplicity and Sophistication in Student Writing by Ruth Breeze. In this article, the program's wordsmith and vocab profile were used in order to judge lexical variation between the essays of Spanish undergraduates writing in English and a set of essays independently judged as being of TWE Grade 6 standard. In other words, they were compared to essays which were deemed target essays concerning college-level academic writing. The results were that Spanish students' essays were characterized by low lexical variation, a preponderance of high-frequency words, and underuse of academic vocabulary in comparison with the target style. In the assessment of the data, the article also denoted several of the possible reasons for this. However, what made this article interesting to me were the 2 following quotes. First, in quantitative terms, it is possible to confirm that these students' texts made greater use of the simple core vocabulary of English. By the objective criterion of the vocabulary profile test, the students' texts were simpler than the TWE essays. And secondly, this experiment indicates that vocabulary may be one of the key problems in student writing. Text with a low frequency of academic words, coupled with a high frequency of words from the basic 1,000 word core of English, may give an impression of oversimplicity or even lexical impoverishment. According to these quotes, the seeming lexical impoverishment can be perceived as creating overly simple writing. These Spanish student essays were not considered to be on the level of the target essays. Thus, these students' inability to produce variation in their diction did play a distinct role in the judgment of their writing. The second article I found to be very interesting in my research is Script Writing as a Tool for Learning Stylistic Variation by Valerie Sargera. In this article, Sargera makes the claim that script writing allows students to practice 3 different modes of writing: technical cinematographic language and camera directions and film credits, narrative language and exposition of scenes, sets, and characters, and finally, quasi-spoken intimate language and dialogue between fictional lovers. In the case of the article, English-speaking students of French were asked to complete an assignment which required them to do a list of tasks, producing a short film, and review of other classmates' films. This gave them a wide range of experiences using and writing the French language. By having to perform all the tasks in this assignment, students must learn a variety of styles which will in turn ameliorate their ability to vary their style in writing. Perhaps this assignment would be beneficial in English writing classes also, for exposing students to media and techniques in variation. Finally, I want to bring up a few questions which my research has left me thinking might be great for further study on this topic. First, what assumptions are made in the Ruth Breeze article by those who deem the TWE essays as being worthy of being the target essays for this study? Second, what is the relationship between learning another language and using variation in L1, or a speaker's first language? Third, why does writing which utilizes variation in its diction, syntax, and style tend to get better judgments of value? And is it purely just because of the aesthetics of the writing, or what does aesthetics have to do with this? Fourth, what is the nature of the relationship between learning variation while teaching/helping others? And fifth, does the absence of grading help students learn variation in their writing by allowing them to be more audacious in their writing and thus learning from their mistakes? Thanks for listening to my presentation on variation in students' writing, and I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say.